who is going to be demonstrating the solution. Today's webinar is going to be discussing GDPR. We are going to talk a little bit about who Attunity are. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Gold Client solution, as that is the solution that we have for assisting companies with compliance of the GDPR regulations. The focus of the solution that we have is the one that seems to be attracting everybody's attention at the moment, which is Article 17 of the GDPR requirements, the right for people to be forgotten. And then at the end, we will have a Q&A session, and then as was originally explained, if you have any questions, please do type them into the Q&A box. Okay, so let's just cover off who Attunity are. Attunity is a global organization based out of Burlington in Massachusetts in the United States, and we have EMEA offices in Chertsey, just outside of London, in France, and in Germany. We are growing about 30% year on year, and we have about 50% of the top 100 companies in the world using the Attunity solutions that we provide. Here's an example of some of the customers that we have that are using the Attunity solutions. A lot of those have recently bought the Gold Client solution specifically for GDPR compliance. Some good examples of that are Ørsted in the Netherlands, who bought a scrambling-only solution for SAP landscapes solution to meet their GDPR compliance. They actually implemented with us the first instance of the scrambling-only solution, then did the remaining 3 themselves, because Gold Client's not difficult to implement or to use. And I'm delighted to say that last week, EDP in Portugal signed up for an enterprise license of Gold Client for a 16 SAP landscape system, and their main requirement was to meet the GDPR compliance regulations coming into force on the 25th of May. Okay, so why do customers need Gold Client? I'll run through this very quickly because I think most of you will probably appreciate this, but the main reason that customers look for Gold Client is the issues that they have providing sensible, reliable, and usable data in their non-prod environments without having to do full system copies. Now, full system copies, as we all know, take time, and if you've got large databases, take up a lot of architecture. And if you've got HANA, that architecture is very, very, very costly. So quite an expensive activity to do. Second, once you've actually done the copy, yes, you've got some brand new fresh data that's nice and good and easy to use for your development, QA, and test environment purposes, but you run out of that data very quickly. And then you're into a round of either having to manually create data, or you have to wait for the next refresh. And of course, the most pressing issue at the moment is GDPR. And GDPR is really forcing a lot of companies to think about how do they handle not only the requirements in their production system, for which there are tools like the SAP ILM solution, and I will talk about one that we're going to be releasing shortly, but also, and this often gets overlooked, how do you handle GDPR in your non-production systems? Okay, so what is Gold Client? I will cover this very quickly. Gold Client is a solution that is written in ABAP, installs directly into your source and your target systems, and exists in its own namespace. It is a tool that allows you to take subsets of data from your production system. It is sophisticated enough to be able to take even individual documents, i.e. a single sales order and all the associated transactions from your production system and load it into any target QA training development environment that you wish. Using Gold Client, you can create new clients, or you can even stand up brand new environments. And the key thing here is that the use of Gold Client leads to no downtime in either the source or the target systems. So even when you're exporting and importing data, you don't need to take down production, and you don't need to take down your non-prod environments. We use direct table exports and imports, which provides one of the fastest transfer rates in the market, if not the fastest transfer rates. And we allow you to do things like export once and import many. Why is this important? Regression testing, cyclical testing, all of these things require the same set of data. So we give you the ability to load a set of data, run tests, then we give you the ability to delete that data and any user-created data, and then re-import the original data and rerun the tests. So it speeds up things like user support, development, training, etc. Okay. Gold Client is fully certified by SAP on SAP NetWeaver, HANA, and HANA S4, and we cover all of the components on the right-hand side. Not only that, many customers have different systems and different components of SAP, and sometimes customers come to us and say, well, we've got this particular component, can you add it into the configuration of Gold Client? The answer is yes, and not only yes, but we typically can add it into the configuration of Gold Client within 3 to 5 days. So it's very, very simple to set up and use. Some of the main features of Gold Client: data snap. This is the ability to extract data from your production system based upon a specific set of rules. Good example might be that you go in and you say, give me all of last week's open undelivered sales orders. Gold Client will go to your production system. It will export all of the sales orders that fall into that category and any associated documents, export them, compress them 24:1, and then import them into your target environment. Not only that, we solve the problem of master data, which is often an issue for many customers with their production and non-production environments, because when you do the export and import, we refresh all of the master data associated with that. All of the selection criteria are fully configurable, which means that if there is a field on our standard screen that you actually want to select data by and it doesn't appear on the screen, you can go into the Gold Client configuration and add it in. Another key point is that we provide you the ability to do subset synchronization. This is where you can copy data from your ECC system and use exactly the same selection parameters to export and import data from your CRM and SRM systems at the same time. The second method of moving data is called Intelligent Slice. Intelligent Slice does exactly what it says. It takes a slice of data across your SAP landscape. So it will take all of the data from finance, from production, from purchasing, from sales, based upon the parameters that you enter, which could simply be between 2 dates, or it could be between 2 dates for a particular company code, or a particular company code and department, or an individual asset. Okay, those are the main features. So let's get on to the meat of this. GDPR compliance. Rules are really quite simple. Simple in the way that they are stated, very, very complex to actually implement. By the 25th of May, any businesses trading with or working inside of the EU needs to ensure appropriate security of data and protect it from unauthorized processing. That's really the nub of what GDPR is. The fines, as we know, are significant, and it includes all sorts of different data that wasn't previously included. Things like IP addresses, which are incredibly important to telecommunications companies. You must not only be able to show that you do comply, but also how you comply. What we have found in talking to all of our customers is that the main focus for the moment is Article 17. The SAP system's security, generally speaking, in your production system will avoid any unauthorized access to data. Non-production is where the problem exists, but also the ability to allow people to be forgotten, which is the most important aspect. The right to be forgotten is causing most of the issues. So, what is it that we do? Right, the first thing that supports the right to be forgotten is we actually provide you the ability to delete data from your non-production systems. It is an accurate method of deleting data that ensures complete consistency of data within your non-prod environments. The second thing we provide is the ability to scramble data. Goal Client can scramble data from any field within SAP. We scramble the data on export, and the export file that we create that is compressed 24:1 is non-readable by anything other than SAP, so you have to import it to be able to read it. The data is scrambled in such a way and using subset sync in such a way that we can actually integrate ECC, CRM, and SRM. So in the example that you see here, if you export data from ECC and you scramble Univar chemicals to customer Acme Industries, it will scramble it in exactly the same way in ECC and CRM, keeping consistency of that data between those systems. We have comprehensive scrambling rules, but in addition, we provide customers the ability to create their own ABAP-based scrambling rules and call them from directly within the Goal Client solution. It doesn't happen very often, but occasionally customers do have some strange method that they wish to scramble data by, and this allows them to do that. Okay, so the use case for GDPR Article 17. Any data in SAP can be anonymized. The data is anonymized on export, so no matter where you import that data into, it will always be anonymized. The anonymization rules can be made mandatory. So the functional consultants, and the system is designed to be used by functional consultants, the functional consultant pulling data from the Goal Client solution will have the, based upon the selection parameters that they've chosen, will have the scrambling rules automatically fire and scramble the data, and they can't be switched off. The rules are flexible and configurable, so as I said, we haven't come across a customer yet that is unable to scramble the data in the way that they want within the Goal Client solution. Again, very, very important, the data cannot be reverse engineered. So once you have scrambled the data and imported it into your non-prod environment, there is actually no way of getting back to the original data unless you stand side by side a screen that's showing the data in your non-prod environment and a screen that's showing the data in your production environment. As I said, the anonymization can be synchronized between ECC, CRM, and SRM, keeping consistency of your data. And another thing is we can actually segregate the duties of exporting and importing the data using the standard Goal Client security model. Data deletion provides the right to be forgotten. And just a little teaser, we are going to be releasing in June a beta test version to a number of different Goal Client customers, a scrambling in production solution with an expected release date of late June, early July. Why have we decided to produce a scrambling in production solution? The main issue that we have found is that customers are seeing that really the only method of providing a solution for this in standard SAP production systems is to implement the SAP ILM solution. It's a very, very good solution, but very expensive and expensive to implement. We are providing an accurate and usable solution that is a much lower cost solution for the marketplace. Okay, a little bit of shameless advertising. This is a quote from David Linton, who is the director of SAP IHS Market. They originally bought Goal Client for SOX compliance, but actually found that when they implemented it, they got a 75% reduction in the number of transports between their development and QA system because they were doing proper unit testing. That in itself paid for Goal Client inside of 6 months. Okay, at this point, I am going to hand over to Adrian, who is going to do the demonstration for you.
Okay, can someone allow me to share my screen? The button's not active on mine.
Done.
Okay. Nope, still not.
Sorry, just
Okay.
transferring it through to you now.
Okay, brilliant. So you can now see my screen. Okay, morning everyone. I'm going to give you a walkthrough of the Gold Client solution. As you've understood from Adam, it covers a number of capabilities. So I'll give you a very high level overview just to show you the capability, the ease of use, but then we will dive into the detail as to how we identify fields, how we scramble them, what are the options open to you to meet the GDPR compliance. As Adam said, Gold Client is installed directly into your source and your target SAP systems. We have our own authorization object, so you can control who has access to the solution, and then within that, which elements of the functionality you want those teams to use. As Adam mentioned, you have the ability, and this is primarily for the basis team, the ability to create new clients or refresh existing ones, compare a source to a target, so are there differences, will those differences impact any testing or development work that you're doing? And if you need to stand up a brand new SAP system from scratch, we can help your basis team accelerate that by copying off the object repository from your productive environment. DataWave is our own scheduling tool, and again, that's something that the basis team can use to set up the jobs that need to run to create a new environment, so they can then go home and have a great weekend, even though the functional teams have asked for a whole new environment to play with the following week. The middle part of the screen is where we're going to focus, and this is where the GDPR piece really comes into play. You're going to want to be able to select data that you want to anonymize. So we're going to use DataSnap to select data based on an individual business process, or we can take a time slice of data or data based on any organizational object, select that data, make sure that those scrambling rules are applied to that, so that any data that's then created and moved to a file and is imported into your target SAP client is already anonymized, and therefore it's safe for you to open and your teams to use that data. Having selected that data, you can import it into the target. We'll see the transformation rules in detail in just a second. And as Adam said, when you finish playing with the data, you can then go and delete it. So that means if you want to create data for a particular testing scenario, you can do that. You can then delete that data once you've tested, if it was successful or unsuccessful, and you can then go back and re-import that again. It's perfect for training courses, and as we've already understood, the GDPR requirement, the right to be forgotten. If someone wants to be removed from your QA systems, absolutely come in here and then just delete their data, and we'll see how you select that data in just a second. We all know that your SAP system is non-standard. You have your own additions. Some of those may contain sensitive data that you will also need to adapt and anonymize. Our configuration tool, our setup, walks you through assigning those tables to either the master data requirements or assigning those tables to the related transaction elements within the standard SAP data model. What that means is we're able to identify everything associated with an object in SAP. So if you have a sales order, we can pick up the delivery, the pick, the pack, the ship, the billing, the accounting documents, profitability analysis, and all of the master data. We're also then able to extend that model to pick up any custom developments you have, and we're able then to identify and anonymize any of the data within that. Usually at this point, I step through some of the areas in more detail, but we're going to focus today primarily on the ability to transform the rules. GDPR is concerned with making sure that you can identify the appropriate fields and anonymize those data elements in a way that is appropriate. So what we offer you here is a number of transformation rules as standard out of the box. The majority of our customers are able to use these. They can validate those against their own interpretation of GDPR and what's important to them based on the use of their SAP system and the data that they contain. Because obviously not everyone contains HR data, and therefore it's not important for them to use the HR rules. So we obviously allow you to create and change your own rules. And if we step into here for this particular HR one, we can see here that you simply pull together the tables that are important, that you want to scramble or you want to validate that that data is going to be changed. And then we can drill down within the table into what are the fields that exist within that table. So again, this is all something that's very familiar to those that are familiar with the SAP environment. So it's not exactly rocket science to come in, change, and set these up and see what's going on. we can see here that the complete name field is going to be derived. So each field is given its own rule, and you can choose how that field is going to be changed or scrambled on export. We can see clearly on the right-hand side that in this instance, the complete name field is going to be derived. So we're going to go to this table. We're going to pick up the first name and the surname. We're going to concatenate those just the same way you do in Excel. You add them together. We're going to put a space between those, and we're going to store that data in that field. We can see here, looking down here, that the first name and the last name are going to be made up from a list. So we can see here, if we go to maintain our list of values, that we've set up some default names for individual employees, so first names and surnames. What this then allows you to do is to come in here and say, okay, I want to set up some dummy default data, and then Gold Client will come in here and pick up a value at random. The other options open to you are blanking out. So if you don't need the data in that field, but you still need to copy that field, or you want to copy an entire table, that's fine. We can simply blank out the data, and therefore it doesn't exist, and therefore it's not open to any misinterpretation or anything. We've seen that we can derive values from other areas of the SAP system. We can also put in fixed values. So this is key where maybe you want to do testing output coming to you. So you can put in your own email address or a dummy one. If you want to put in default or dummy bank data or IBAN numbers so that you can test a payment run, again, without using real, genuine data, you're quite at liberty to do that. We've seen that we can maintain our own lists, and we will go and get a value at random. We can mix up numbers, we can mix up dates. Now, these rules on their own are standards of what EDP are implementing. Twinings have used, Babcock's, Bank of England, Tellers, and Northrop Grumman in the US, to name a few, that need to meet US and EU safe harbor agreements, and those customers that have chosen Gold Client to meet GDPR compliance in the European Union. Having set up these rules, what we can do is we can go and assign these as default rules. So again, this is key to GDPR compliance. You need something that's flexible, that you can maintain values at a field level, but then that you can set as a default. And what that means is your audit teams can come in and confirm that every time data is extracted from your source, typically production, that data will be anonymized or scrambled. The way Gold Client works is that data is scrambled on export. So you will choose the data that you want, and we'll see that in a second. That data is read from the database tables. It is applied to the scrambling rules, and then that data is stored in a file in your shared file server, and then it can be imported into any target clients that you have associated with your SAP environment. So again, whether you're dealing with transaction data or master data, again, we're able to apply the same level of control against each of these elements. So that's all the setup that's required. Again, a lot of this is default, so it's just simply a case of you validating that you're happy with the way that the Gold Client defaults for GDPR are set out. The way that we move the data, we scramble the data, we're going to use DataSnap to select the data that we're interested in. To help you do that, we have a number of data types predefined in the system. So it doesn't matter whether you're wanting to anonymize an individual record relating to a business partner, whether it is that you're wanting to pick up and identify elements in iDocs or text elements, that's one that often gets missed by a number of our competitors, or any other part of the SAP environment. So if HR or finance are key, we can pick up and select those individual transactional records. Now, Adam has mentioned that Ørsted have been able to go ahead and complete the second, third, and fourth implementations of their scrambling rules all by themselves, having done the first lot with them. So let me show you very quickly how easy Gold Client is to understand under the covers. Again, this goes back to, we have customers who've implemented governance, risk, and compliance. Wasn't something on our standard list, but again, as Adam said, in a couple of days, we're able to get this set up. So we identify the tables that relate to a particular data type. Again, all of this is done for you. We even have a utility that will then identify your own custom tables, and you can then accept just a tick box to map those into the Gold Client data model that's delivered as standard. To make sure that your sales documents then link to the other areas which are associated with that business transaction, we've assigned and defined the links that you're going to need. So again, we're going to link a sales order to the sales order line items. You might want deliveries, you might want billing documents, contracts, and material master records. Again, this is something that we can tailor as part of an implementation, and you will validate as part of an installation as well that we have actually picked up all of the fields that are pertinent to you, your own customizations, and the data that your business users need. So having selected that, that's all there is basically under the covers to make your Gold Client solution work for you. So we're going to execute this, and we're now going to select one or multiple documents. It could be the case where you have a production support issue. You might want to pick up a particular record. That data will need to be anonymized as you're moving that data into your QA system. Or maybe you're going to pick up a job lot of sales orders and again run a training course or some testing based on that. I'm going to run my import options. If I want, I can choose an RFC destination, in which case I'm not only going to create the export file that's compressed, as Adam has said. So if someone hacks your SAP system and takes it, the data has already been anonymized. The data is then compressed into a file that's stored in the safety of your SAP server environment. So again, someone would have to breach those three elements to be able to get anything meaningful out of that. So then at that point, I can then push the data, if I want to, into a target environment. So I can simply accept that. I can now schedule that job to run, and I can set that to run immediately. Okay, all very simple. Going into my target environment, I can come in again to the Gold Client solution. Because I didn't choose an RFC destination, I can come into the import control. What I'm able to do is I'm able to find a file. I'm able to select one, and this is going to show me that I have picked up a load of data relating to the sales area. So I've chosen one sales document, but there are in fact 549 other tables and documents that relate to this particular sales order in my demonstration system. So it doesn't matter which part of the system you're playing in, we can come and pick up any or all of that data and move that into the target. So I'm going to click this off, and I'm going to import this data. What you'll notice, and we'll have a quick look at some of the other import capabilities, is Gold Client's asking me if data already exists in my target client, so I want to overwrite that data. So again, it's something that, yes, you can import data into the target. You can then import it again and again and again and play with that data as often as you need to achieve the business results that you're looking for with regard to testing or production support resolution. So I'm going to accept that, and that data is going to run in. It'll take about 10 seconds to move that. So the import options, I can use background and parallel processing. Again, I'm not interfering with the way that SAP normally tracks and moves data. What we're doing is we're using background jobs. We're allowing it to slice up that data to optimize the speed of moving that in based on the number of jobs your basis team will allow you to pick up and move. Again, you can specify at this point that you create the file. Do you want that file to validate whether there is data in the target prior to importing it? And again, remember that the data's already been anonymized on export, and we'll see that in just a second. IBM wanted an additional set of controls around system and ID clients so that the file can only be opened in certain clients. The HR environments are one per country, and they obviously don't want German data being loaded into a French QA system. So again, that's an additional feature. We listen to our customers, we add that back into the product set. Adam mentioned that we can link to SRM and CRM. I'm playing with sales orders here, so I can link to a CRM system, and this will then extract data that relates to my original sales document selection. It will pick out the associated data within the CRM environment. It will also apply consistently the scrambling rules between ERP and CRM. And therefore, it doesn't matter. I can either start by selecting data in CRM, or I can simply select data from the ERP system, and Gold Client will pick up and manage everything else. To validate what's happening, we can see a data transformation button here. So this is showing us that these transformation rules that we saw at the start, some are standard and one was customized by me, these rules have been defined as default against particular data types. GDPR compliance is encouraging you to set these as default, and therefore you shouldn't really have access to turn these off. However, in practical terms, there might be times where you need to resolve a production support issue. It could be beneficial to have the original source data without it having been changed. So maybe you've got an issue with an outgoing bank payment or whatever it happens to be. If you have the appropriate authorization, if you are in the source environment, you may be able to turn off the transformation rules at this point. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to build a compensating control with your internal audit team that will allow you to monitor when these rules have been turned off. The other thing to note with Gold Client is having imported that data into the target, whilst it might not be scrambled, you could actually have your teams resolve the production support issue. But as soon as that's done, you have two options open to you. One would be to go through and delete the data that you've imported, and therefore it will not exist in the target environment, and therefore you can remove it, and therefore there is no issue with regard to GDPR compliance. If you prefer, you can always go back to the source environment. You can select the data again. The data will then be anonymized on export, and then when you import that file, again, you're going to overwrite the data in the target, and it will then show the transformed values as opposed to the original values. The benefit from a compliance perspective as well is the fact that we do direct data inserts into the target environment. The reason that's important is it then stops you being able to see any change records, and therefore there is no way, unless you go back to the source productive system, as Adam mentioned, and look at the primary key elements, you'll be able to then tie up the source to the target. I'm now in my target QA environment. I can see here that that Gold Client data has been imported and all those tables have been updated. So I could now, if I want to go and have a look at my sales order that I copied, it's very simple and easy to find because Gold Client uses the original document values. So whatever was in the source is now in the target, subject to the transformation rules that are coming through. So you'll see here that when I open up the sales order, the sales document number is the same, the purchase order reference the same, the delivery requirements date and so on, and the purchase material are the same. I have here applied a manual or a separate transformation rule that changes the description because it's then just nice and easy as part of a live demonstration like this. At the same time as selecting the sales order, we did pick up the additional follow-on documents, so the delivery, the goods issue, the accounting documents, and we can drill down into any or all of these. So this is where, if you are linking finance data and payment information back to a customer master records, we can then identify the appropriate fields, so the contact name, the banking details, and scramble those. So you don't have to hunt around the SAP system and tie back that data to make sure that you're applying the transformation rules correctly to everything else. So what we can see here is the account, the document numbers, the posting date and document date are all as per the original system, and again the values are the same. At this point I can go again into my target environment, I can go into the Gold Client cockpit, and I can delete the data that we have just imported. So what this is going to do is allow me to delete literally the data that was in the original data file. So again, I can select this, I can execute this in foreground, and within a couple of seconds that data is going to be removed from the target. So again, that data has now gone. Point to note is the export file still exists unless I choose to delete that data. So what that means is if I want to do iterative testing, and this could be important particularly for the HR teams where they want to test the changes in the taxation and the benefit rules potentially that come out regularly, they can then use and re-import the same data that already existed. So they come in here, they can go and simply select the same file again, and they can then again execute this in foreground and bring in the same data. If you prefer to then delete all of the associated documents with that, again, it's very simple. You have the same selection capability in the target. So if you've posted a lot of deliveries against your sales order or run a load of payment runs or payroll posting sessions. Again, you can select all of that data in the target. You can then delete that. And remember, you're already playing with anonymized data, but again, that data can be changed and effectively scrambled in situ if you needed it to be. Because a lot of people tend to go through and they might do full system or client copies. And what that means is once you land that data in that target QA environment, that you then need to have a way of going in and anonymizing that data. So Gold Client will work for that as well. You simply use the Gold Client in your target, use the data snap or maybe the intelligence slice, select the data that you want, write it to a file, and then import it into your target system, effectively scrambling that data in situ. Very quickly, just to show you that whilst we've selected individual documents using data snap, you have the ability with intelligence slice to choose data for a slice of data within the SAP environment. I just want to highlight this because again, this is a differentiator between us and some of the competition. We're able to put in a from and a to date. So what it means is, again, you can be very granular and specific about how you select and manage the data that you want to copy into your target environment that you'll then use for testing, or data that you want to select that you want to either delete out or that maybe you want to anonymize. Again, we can be specific. We can go in and choose a company code. And SAP in the US actually recommend us to companies who want to do carve-outs from their SAP system, but prefer not to use the standard SAP tools that might be open to them. When I execute this, again, Gold Clients are very flexible. It's going to allow you to select the data that you want to use when you want to use it. So whether you want to delete data from your environment or whether you want to simply go in and scramble certain types of data, again, you can be very specific. So rather than maybe transforming all of the master data, you might only want to change the master data relating to a particular area of master data and or certain set of transaction types. So again, you can simply come in here and select all of that data and then say go. And this is going to create an export file with a set of individual containers for each of the types of data that you're looking to pick up and select. So again, we can see that data being selected. We can see those files being put together. And if I come into this one, you'll see that Gold Client is a very light touch. We've designed it to make sure that it doesn't actually put a load on your source environment. So you'll see that we're selecting master data records, we're selecting internal orders, and we've found a number of records that relate to those types of data. The rest of the data types are also assigned to jobs, and those jobs will then run sequentially. So we're able to pick up those data elements one after the other. So again, making sure that you can pull data from the source, move it into a target environment anytime you like. So that means is as soon as maybe you've a full client copy or you want to use Gold Client to copy just individual records, you can absolutely go in and do that and make sure that the data is always going to be in the state that you want it to be. So I'm just going to give you a quick recap of what we've seen today so that we're clear. The left-hand side of the screen, we haven't been into these. These are more for the basis team to make sure that your client environments are set up, ready to go, with the appropriate master data, configuration, user masters, and so on. And is there a difference between a source and a target that will impact any of your testing? The focus was to have a look at the transformation rules. As you've seen, we do provide a number of standards. You are able to go down to a field level. You're able to assign a specific rule that is important for the way that you want to transform that data as it lands into your target environment. I say as it lands, the data is scrambled or anonymized on export. So as soon as you create the export file, your data's safe. So if someone manages to nab that file, it's really not an issue. You can set these rules as defaults. We've seen how that is controlled. And therefore, you're safe. Your audit team will be able to monitor your compliance and making sure that that's applied every time your data is exported. Data snap and intelligence slice will allow you to select the data that you either want to delete, so the right to be forgotten, or the data that you want to maybe scramble in situ, or the data that you just want to use for testing and play with, or set up a dummy environment. We've seen we can manage the import and the export processes, and once you finish playing with the data, feel free to delete it, and then you're good to go. So at this point, what I'd like to do is to open it up. Are there any questions?
Thanks for that, Adrian. Yes, as it happens, we do have some questions. The first one is, what is the implementation time for Gold Client on a heavily customized, heavily bespoke system?
Okay. A typical implementation, and let's take this for ECC, is 2 days implementation and 3 days training. So the implementation is very much installing Gold Client, creating a new environment, copying over all of the master data, making sure that then your environment's ready for the testing with the functional teams. I say testing because it includes the validation, and therefore they will come armed with complex documents that they want to see how they select, move, and then validate that data. As part of the initial setup, we have a utility program that runs, and it identifies your custom tables. Where there is a custom table with a field that has the same naming convention as a standard SAP table, our software solution provides a recommendation as to where that should be mapped in to the Gold Client data model that's delivered as standard out of the box. Therefore, it's a very quick and easy option to be able to put a tick against those, and then that will make the assignment against the appropriate data type, as we saw for the sales order. Not every SAP developer gets given a script or follows a script, and therefore there can be some manual assignment that is required. To give you an idea, Daimler in Spain, when they implemented Gold Client, they had 2017 bespoke tables. They went through, they identified which ones were master data, and therefore put them into a category, and we copied all the master data tables in one go. And the rest they then went through, and again, it was a mixture of those that mapped very quickly and those that they had to do manually. So for them, it was a process that they completed with 2 individuals in 3 days. So again, we give them a guidance as to how it works, what to do, and then it's down to them to complete that process because they understand that data better, but we are on site to help them through that during the initial implementation and training phase.
Okay, the next question was, does the Gold Client solution utilize BAPIs?
Absolutely not, no. The way that we work is we allow the users, as you've seen, to select the data. We then do a read down through the ABAP layer, read the data from the underlying database tables, apply the transformation rules, and then write that to the export file that's going to be used. The reason we don't use BAPIs is there are some inherent weaknesses with BAPIs that they find it difficult to pick up and maintain the document flow, not just within ERP, but certainly when you go cross-modular between ERP, CRM, SRM, and so on. A typical example there is if you create a sales document, you do a delivery, you do a partial billing, and then you put a block on the sales order. The BAPI typically only finds the sales order, it then sees a block, it will put a block on that record, and it will miss the other transactions. The other thing with a BAPI is you will lose the original document number, and therefore you will have to go and find that particular transaction and the associated documents. So it's just not quite as clean and clear cut as the way Gold Client works.
Okay. Are you able to dissect info types to remove some parts of data from the info type, but not all of it?
Yes, absolutely. You saw when I dipped into the configuration, what we were able to do is we were able to go down and determine the linkages between the various parts of the SAP environment. So whilst we provide a number of linkages as standard out of the box, that's one of the reasons we do the validation as part of the install, just to make sure that for the environment that you have and the use you make of each of the individual fields, that you're able to copy and select the data that you want. If you're finding you're copying data that's unnecessary, we can remove those links or remove those connections to certain tables so that you don't pull data that's unnecessary. But also, conversely to that, if there's something that you want that wasn't in our standard makeup, we can actually add that back in for you.
Okay. Can you synchronize data between ECC systems?
Yes, we can. Where the subset sync capability is, there's nothing stopping you putting in another ECC environment. An example is there's an aircraft manufacturer who has a number of SAP systems that are used for the individual component manufacture. There is a separate ECC environment that then takes that data from those production orders and projects within their environment and pulls that all together as part of the assembly process. So it's important for them as part of the project to be able to copy all of the data relating to a particular project or aircraft and see that each of the systems have the appropriate data so they could do full end-to-end testing with regard to that.
Okay, just a couple more. Can your tool help automate testing?
Yes, it can. Some companies use automated test tools. Others will have scripts that they prefer to run. One of the benefits of Gold Client is you can create, as you saw today, the ability to go in and select certain data that you want to use. Whilst I selected a sales order, what I could have done was maybe select half a dozen sales orders. Some may be partially delivered, some may be have no associated transactions. So you might want to pick those up and then use that data for testing. We can save that selection criteria as a variant, and therefore that would allow you to simply run that variant to copy that data in at any point in the future. You can then simply run the tests that you have against that data. In fact, we have a partner that we use who have some testing software capability. What that allows them to do then is to use Gold Client to select the data that they want to use, and then they can run their manual or their automated testing processes using their tool against the data that Gold Client has selected and copied into a target environment for them.
And the final question was, can you specifically manage master data?
Yes, we can. I didn't walk you through that within the demonstration today. I focused more on the transactional side. Copying an entire master data table is more one of the activities of the basis team. So when they're creating or refreshing a client for you, they have the option to copy either all the master data or they can copy subsets of the master data. The way that that works is we have grouped together the SAP tables that relate to a specific area. So for example, there's 36 customer master tables in SAP. You can tell I've been playing with SAP for quite a few years now. So you can select simply that you want to copy customer master data, and then you will pick up all the data in those 36 tables and move them over. Conversely, companies like Mercedes-Benz in the US, they have a 1 terabyte material master file. In reality, they realize that those multi-millions of records that exist and make up that 1 terabyte are not all going to be used for training, testing, and development purposes. So they choose at that point not to copy over those master data and MRP tables. That's not an issue because, as you saw when I selected that data slice, you have the ability of going in and choosing particular master data types if you prefer. So if your organizational object related to a particular plant, you'd be able to identify just the materials for that plant, maybe that were just created in a certain time frame. And therefore you can choose subsets of master data if you prefer not to copy all of that data. The other point to note, just for a complete answer to this one, is that every time we copy or you select and copy a transaction, we also copy and refresh the master data associated with that transaction. So you'll always have master data that you can then use for additional testing should it be required.
Okay. I think that completes, that completes all the questions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending today's webinar. Should you have any questions, then you can see our contact information on the screen with you now. We'd be delighted to discuss with you GDPR requirements or any other requirements with regard to your landscape management in your non-production environments.
Thank you very much.